Greetings, dear listeners. This week, Shadi and I hosted Cameron Kasky, a rising young activist in the Democratic Party, who gives us a glimpse of where American politics might be headed. Cameron started his career after the Parkland shooting, but has since become passionate about the Palestinian cause, especially so after Gaza. We recorded this episode earlier this week, a day after Marco Rubio caused a furor by suggesting America's decision to attack Iran was shaped by the fact that Israel might do it without us anyway, leaving our assets in the region dangerously exposed. The conversation got heated, but it's very much worth your time. American politics is changing before our eyes, and anyone thinking we're going back to the way things were after Trump has another thing coming. Before we get started, a reminder to head on over to wisdomofcrowds.live and consider becoming a paying subscriber if you're not one yet. And don't forget to give us a like and review on your favorite podcast app. With all that out of the way, on to the show.
Well, first of all, we're really excited to have you. Cameron Kasky is our guest today. He was a candidate in the Democratic primary in New York's 12th district. And that was an exciting campaign. We'll talk about his experience there. And also, Cameron was named one of Time Magazine's 100 most influential people in 2018.
God, I forgot about that. 8 years ago.
And maybe we can start with that. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you became politicized? You got your start in kind of gun rights advocacy, but for folks who aren't familiar with your story, maybe just start from there.
Well, it just behooves me to point out to everybody that I was anti-gun.
Not gun rights
advocacy.
Oh, sorry, gun rights
is very
advocacy.
off. Yeah, I was against the guns. I was in a school shooting in Parkland, Florida when I was 17 years old. And I had already been kind of politicized at the time. So right away when we were hiding from the shooter, I was just thinking about how, things like this are policy decisions. And these are things that don't happen in most other parts of the world. This is a very American concept that I'm hiding here in my classroom. And a shooter can just come in and kill somebody. So I got my classmates together and we started something called March for Our Lives, which led to millions of people around the world marching in the streets, demanding some change. I think we thought we were going to get a little bit more change than we did, but welcome to America. That's how it goes. And it was a very difficult fight, but it was one that we felt compelled to fight because, we had a lot of classmates who could no longer speak for themselves. So we knew that the cameras were going to be coming to our hometown because we grew up in this era of school shootings. Columbine happened the year before I was born. Sandy Hook, Aurora, which is at a movie theater. We knew the narrative of the school shooting. We knew how this was going to go in the media, and we knew that they were going to want to depict how sad we were. But a couple of my classmates and I came together and said, we need them to see how angry we are. We don't need them to film us crying. We're angrier than we are sad. And that was the narrative, was we have a lot of politicians in this country who are bought off by the gun lobby. And even though the AR-15 was not designed for civilian use, and there are too many of them in circulation, our politicians still think it's reasonable for somebody like the 19-year-old who shot up my high school to legally purchase a firearm, despite the fact that there had been several reports with law enforcement about him exhibiting violent behaviors. And now I'm old. Now I'm not a sprightly, pubescent teen anymore. My back hurts.
How old are you now?
Oh, I'm an entire 25.
Okay.
Yeah, that's when it starts. That's when the pains start coming in. Take it from someone truly old. 25 is all downhill after that, my friend.
Well, they say 30s are the new 20s, so I think I'm going to feel young again in like 5 years. But until then, I confess I feel old.
Well, that's great to hear that you have a long career ahead of you. You're just getting started. Maybe tell us a little bit about why you decided to run for Congress in the Democratic primary. I think that it was interesting to me to watch you because I think you became known for your pro-Palestine advocacy. You became very vocal on that particular issue. And was that a kind of natural evolution from gun rights advocacy? I mean, how did that come about? You
Well,
shifting your focus a little bit in.
anti gun rights advocacy, less gun rights.
Oh, sorry. I
I know
don't know why I keep on saying
no,
that.
it's the most common thing that we, it's just I have to clarify with everybody. Not a gun rights advocate. I don't think that I'm infringing upon an unreasonable amount of rights with my gun positions, but gun rights has been taken.
Let me start that again, because that'll be a little bit embarrassing for me to have.
No.
that.
It's funny. It's funny. You keep getting corrected. I like it. Keep it in.
Okay,
This is the experience. This is the experience.
That's right.
Indeed.
It's like how I get called an anti-Israel activist, and I'm like, man, just stay in the fucking 1948 borders, and I will leave you alone. Just stay in 1948, and I won't bother you, and keep your money out of our elections, and I won't bother you. And if that is anti-Israel, fine, whatever, I suppose. But no, Palestine advocacy was not something that just naturally happened for me. I was raised in a very functionally Zionist way. I never identified as a Zionist because I didn't recognize Zionism as this right-wing nationalist colonial movement. I recognized it as the idea that God promised us a bunch of land. And even when I had a completely pro-Israel stance, I was like, wait, you guys think that God just promised one group of people a bunch of beachfront property? Like, seriously? So I was what I call functionally Zionist because I had all of the Islamophobia and I had all of the nationalism, and I viewed Israel as this country where rules just kind of don't apply and they can sort of do nothing wrong. It was like, and we call it the land of milk and honey. It's just this fairy tale Disneyland. And I guess it didn't occur to me until my adulthood, or at least whatever you would call what I currently am, that like it's totally okay to say that American imperialism is a bad thing. It's totally okay to criticize the violence that America deals out. And yet somehow, magically, the same standards do not apply to the state of Israel. So I had a tough awakening, and it took me, believing some things that I consider just so unacceptable now for me to then engage with educational materials that helped me understand the truth of these matters and the complexities of these matters and the simpleness of it too. That's the thing with Israel-Palestine is it is this very basic moral issue. And there are complexities to it. There are a lot of nuances, but those nuances bring you right back to the results of the simple view of it. So a lot of people say, oh, it's this complicated, nuanced issue. And people respond to that and say, it's actually quite simple. It's both. It's just the simple route you take and the complex route you take you to the exact same conclusion. So it took me a long time to understand these things.
Was there a turning point for you?
Not exactly. It happened in waves because I started to become critical of Israel's drone strikes and this right-wing takeover of their government. And then October 7th happened. And suddenly I felt as though that was actually proof that I was wrong to have those criticisms, because all of these strikes that Israel would make and all of these different measures that I considered offense, but they considered defense, that those things were actually necessary. So after October 7th, I became far more sympathetic to Israel because as somebody who's experienced mass violence myself, seeing the footage that I saw out of that just brought me back to where I came from and just filled me with this horrifying trauma. And I didn't understand what Hamas was. I didn't understand why they were elected in the first place and what exactly this occupation that these people experience is. I didn't understand that something like the attacks on October 7th, where there were, in fact, war crimes committed, was the response historically to something like an occupation like that. These things were not very clear to me, and it took a lot of making myself uncomfortable to understand that. And I think when you have a Zionist upbringing, whether you are from a Jewish community like I am or from a Christian community, which of course makes up most of the Zionists in this country, you're presented with a kind of fork in the road. And it's like, okay, do the people in my life who have this sympathetic messaging towards Palestine, are they Jew haters who want me to die? Or do they have something for me to learn? And I know a lot of people who grew up very Zionist who decided to actually double down and say, oh, my friends who are at these protests, they actually don't like me, and they never did. And then I know plenty of people who took the harder route and said, okay, these people must believe these things for a reason. Perhaps I have something to learn. And it's difficult. And I don't expect Palestinians, Muslims, or any Arabs to be patient dealing with people who have these worldviews.
Hmm.
But I do think it's my responsibility to be patient with them because I am, in fact, somebody who had those worldviews and was able to kind of break out of that. So I try to approach everyone from a very calm and diplomatic perspective, just talking about international law and talking about the human element of it all. And it's difficult.
But hold on, Cameron. Let me just one thing just to clarify. You said before you were critic of sort of the American imperial stance before you were critical of Israel. Like basically, you were what was your stance on like sort of the United States' role in the world? Like, was it I guess criticizing it from sort of like a more like I don't know Chomskyan left sort of thing that we're doing that, and then you came to after October 7th apply that also to Israel. I just like walk me through that because I think you said something in passing about that.
No, I mean, yeah, I look, I first of all, I'm not going to talk too much about Chomsky given all this Epstein stuff. Second of all, I've just been a dipshit layman my whole life. I mean, I think that I'm smarter than your average person, but I think the average person is really stupid. So I don't consider myself like an intellectual. I engage with the matters with which I engage from a very simplistic perspective. I do a lot of reading, I do a lot of learning, but, I fried my brain so disastrously with adolescent cannabis use that my neurons just do not fire very fast. So I don't touch drugs or alcohol. I haven't in years. But as a teenager, I read a study a bit too late that extended cannabis use as a teenager with bipolar disorder can just have a disastrous effect on your working memory. And I have bipolar disorder. So when I say I'm a dipshit layman, I mean I'm a dipshit layman. Like I simply do not have a lot of processing capacity in my brain. So when I'm engaging with any sort of theory,
No,
I'm just like, oh, that's neat.
No, I didn't mean to I guess all I was going to ask, like, I mean, you're critical of American foreign policy from the left, I guess is what I'm getting at, before you became critical of like Israel. Like, is that right? Or just like walk us through that part of it, basically.
Well, you're raised to be like, okay, things that America does that are bad are not bad if it's Israel doing them. Like, I wish I could provide you a more complex perspective on this, but I went to Hebrew school. I went to my family dinners. Like, anything done in service of what we understand as the state of Israel, anything that is considered a service to Israel is good. Even things that were another country to do them would be considered terrible. When done in what we consider to be service of Israel, those are brave things. Your family members who have served in the occupation, the Israeli Defense Force, they're the heroes of the family. They're the people who come to the family holiday and receive the hero's welcome. And that's just that. Like, if America was conducting these drone strikes against people who we had under occupation, I would have been very against it. But when Israel does it, I was like, oh, that must be for a reason. Again, until I turned like 20.
But so like when Obama was drone striking people, was that an issue that you were?
I had no idea that was happening. I was like 11 years old.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, fair enough. Right.
I just saw Obama as like this really cool guy.
Yeah, he seemed cool for sure.
I mean, he smoked cigarettes like that. Look, I don't smoke cigarettes. I hit the mayor of Sebastia's hookah when I was in Palestine, but I don't smoke cigarettes. But Obama smoked. That was kind of badass, dude.
Yeah. He did it way after it was no longer cool. I guess it's cool again to smoke cigarettes. I don't know.
So, I don't think. Let me be on the record saying it's not cool to do things that are haram.
Oh yeah, I appreciate that.
And
that's
I don't
good
care.
Of you to
I
say.
don't care. I don't care what the uncles say. I don't care what the uncles who say that it's actually not haram. Cigarettes are haram.
Well, that's a strong legal opinion right there. That is actually something I've debated with my parents because I'm a big hookah smoker,
Oh,
And
hookah's allowed. Hookah's permissible.
oh, hookah for sure is allowed. Yeah, let's no doubt about that. Okay, let's move to your congressional campaign, because that's a pretty bold move for someone relatively young to kind of put their hat in the ring in New York's 12th district. Um, is I was also, I should say, bummed that you dropped out of the race, because I think you're charismatic, you're smart, certainly
Shut
smarter than the
up.
average person, as we as we just said, and you're a really good speaker too. So I was excited, but hopefully you'll have another chance sometime in the near future. But walk us through your decision to kind of confront the Democratic Party establishment. You obviously didn't get the support of a lot of mainstream Democrats. You were running a kind of insurgent campaign. It was a long shot campaign, but one that got young people excited. Um, what made you do it?
I wanted to slam my opponents on Israel. I was like, wait a second. Wouldn't it be funny if I went into the most Zionist district in the country and played the media to force this specific issue on everybody in the field? Um, so I did that, and then Ro Khanna said he would just basically let me work with his legislative team, sort of carte blanche on a West Bank resolution. And when you get back from the West Bank, you do not have the capacity to think about anything but the occupation. So I just found myself in a position where I could choose between continuing as this candidate who exists with essentially the sole reason of pushing everybody in the race from the left, or can I get this resolution drafted up and introduced and then continue to do more work? Because I have a lot more plans for Palestine legislation and also some stuff as it pertains to the UAE, because I think we're playing a little nice with the UAE given their backing of the RSF in Sudan, but that's another conversation. So I dropped out because I wanted to work on Palestine stuff, and that was my priority, and that remains my priority.
You don't think Roe was like, the sort of working for the party to get you out of the way, out of a race, and like
No,
because you were uncomfortable?
I don't think the party saw me as enough of a threat. I think it's entirely possible that I could have squeezed through a victory by exploiting the plurality because it was a very crowded field. But no, I don't think the party was mobilizing against me. I don't think that they saw me as a threat yet. I think that should this have been a situation that happened in April or May, and I was polling in a very competitive way, some of the internal polls that got leaked had me in a what I consider to be a pretty impressive position, given my low profile in the district. Because while I'm on the news all the time and I have a big social media following and everything, New York 12 politics is very insider. It's run by these Democratic clubs. It's all about who you know. It's all about what clubs you've spent X amount of time with within the district. Um, and that's just how it works. But um, I don't see the party mobilizing to pull any strings against me. Perhaps I would feel differently in May, but I don't think that happened.
But so I mean, the reason I asked that is just, it's just something Shadi and I talk about a fair bit. Is just like, taking sense of the temperature of where the Democratic Party is on this, and especially since, Israel Palestine's definitely a generational issue, especially in the Democratic Party, though I think it's on the right as well. I'm just curious to get your sense, whether, no, fair enough, like, they you decided to bow out early, so maybe like the momentum wasn't quite there yet. But I do
Well,
wonder if
also
it's
like the
something.
party, the Roe operating at the behest of the party is kind of odd, given that the party just operated against the War Powers Act that Roe was introducing.
Yeah, okay, but I mean,
Schumer's and
the War
Jeffries just
Powers
tried to
Act
spoil
is
his War Powers Act.
the War Powers Act's kind of fucked, though, right? Like, I mean, it's symbolic one way or the other. I guess they could have done it, but I mean, the War Powers Act gets at the exact same sort of question, basically. How much is the party changing? That's my actual like core question about this. I mean, obviously, like I said, these are generational issues. People like you are coming up in the party, are pushing this. Shadi's very optimistic that change is coming. I sometimes wonder just like how entrenched certain things are. And it's not just Israel Palestine. It's basically the thing you were referring to earlier, sort of a robust and muscular American foreign policy abroad that some might call imperialist. Like how much of that is in the capacity to be changed from your like experience and your I don't know, you're feeling, because you're part of the fight and the sort of, youth insurgency coming up. Like, how optimistic are you that these things are actually going to change?
Well, I don't necessarily think it's just a youth insurgency. I mean, some of the most progressive people in the country are also some of the older people in the country. So I think, the youth are exciting and buzzy and inspiring, but I try not to make it a generational battle because there are plenty of people who make me look like fresh out of the womb who are to the left of me on certain issues. Um, I mean, look, I from like in American politics, I am like comparably a leftist, but in what I consider to be a reasonable, like, political map, like, I'm a lib. I'm a boring lib who, I have all these views that in America, again, are considered like anarchy. But I think that I'm like a normie. It
Yeah,
just
but
happens
there's
to
no
be that this is a very right-wing country.
but that's fine. But this is the country we live in. It's the politics we have. I mean, I don't actually care what the fucking Danes think about anything because they don't get to vote in our elections, and there's no global elections, and like the international community and like global opinion is not what actually matters in any of these issues at this point, right?
Yeah. I mean,
So I mean, again,
I
that's what
wish
I'm
I
saying.
could.
Like,
I wish I had a
like,
paragraph on that, but like, yup.
but you know what I'm getting at is just like, that's cool. You're a centrist in Denmark. Good for you. Like, good for Denmark. Who gives a shit? Like, it's fucking Denmark. You know what I mean? Like,
No, I'm just saying, like, in terms of like this insurgency, I think that it's a multi-generational thing. I'm working with a candidate right now in my home district back in Parkland, Florida, Oliver Larkin, who's running against Jared Moskowitz. And Jared Moskowitz just called the War Powers Act like the Ayatollah Support Act or some shit
mhm,
like that.
mhm.
Um, and we got to get rid of this guy. And I think that complicity in the Gaza genocide, I think I'm working a lot to make complicity in the West Bank annexation one of these things too. It's just is not yet. And complicity in the illegal Iran war. Like I do think these things are going to become litmus tests in a lot of different districts. And I think the left is making a lot of smart moves. I think the New Jersey 11 election was the left kind of killing it. And I think we're going to see more of that.
Cameron, before we get, I do want to talk about Iran a little bit more and your perspective there. But before that, I'm someone who's been very frustrated by. I think the Democratic Party is changing, but it's changing slowly. The establishment is very stubborn. The fact that we have someone like Chuck Schumer as the de facto head of the party is a remarkable thing to me. And the fact that Hakeem Jeffries leads Democrats in the House is also remarkable to me. These are incredibly
I don't know.
uninspiring people.
I think Roe is the House leader. Hakeem Jeffries can have the title of House leader, but releasing the Epstein files, forcing the War Powers Act, like that's leadership. Hakeem Jeffries
Oh
is
yeah, I
fucking taking
totally
pictures
agree.
with
But I
baseball
just mean
bats.
the people who have the formal leadership
Yeah,
titles
sure.
are not really, they're not liked by the base. The establishment thumbs its nose at the base. And when it comes to
That's
Israel,
from
Palestine,
that's from Shakespeare, right? No, that's
I,
biting your thumb. In the beginning of Romeo and Juliet, they're biting thumbs at each other as an insult, and that's what starts kind
oh, I
of the
didn't
whole
realize
conflict.
that. That's interesting. Okay. Um, and you probably, I mean, I think we all saw this before the war in Iran started. There was this chart that was going around that, according to Gallup, for the first time in recorded American history, there are more Americans who are sympathetic to the Palestinians than the Israelis. But if you look at the numbers among Democrats, it's even a larger gap. 65% of Democrats are more sympathetic to Palestinians compared to 17% who are more sympathetic towards the Israelis. But the fact that we have a party that is broadly pro-Palestine, it's critical of Israel, it doesn't want us to continue sending weapons to Israel, yet the party leadership is so unresponsive. There's something about that that makes it seem kind of futile, that even when the people have their position, it's not reflected in the leadership of the party. What's your sense of that? Does that kind of, or do you feel like that's changing enough for us to be optimistic going forward?
Well, I mean, look, I spend all my time focusing on Palestine stuff. That's where my primary focus is. I could talk about healthcare, I could talk about AI, I could talk about whatever else, but this is, an issue that's where I see I have the most tools in my box to be useful. So just focusing on just that issue, I think that 2026 can very well be a wake-up call to politicians who are supportive of Israel. I mean, you can even see how AIPAC like has to decorate their rigging of elections under these fake names. Like in Chicago, they're using Elect Chicago Women and like Progressive Fighters PAC and all this shit. Just because taking money from them is such a stain on any politician. And I tell all of my friends, I tell people on podcasts and shit, when you're asking your electeds, when you're asking candidates, are you taking AIPAC money? That you can't do that anymore. It's, are you taking money from pro-Israel groups? Because AIPAC is
Hmm.
not the only group. It's the same thing with NRA money and gun control. What about Gun Owners of America? They spent an exorbitant amount of money on elections. So a politician could say, I don't take NRA money, I'm pro-gun, but I don't get paid off by anybody. And they're taking money from Gun Owners of America. When we say AIPAC, we are just paving the way for AIPAC and other pro-Israel groups to get involved with our elections under the disguise of different groups with these silly names. So that's important for me to flag for everybody. But I mean, again, taking money from the Israel lobby has become a stain on different Democrats, and Democrats are realizing that.
So
Democrats are changing their rhetoric.
So your answer to Shadi's like complaint about why it's so sticky is money. Money in politics is what's keeping like broader change in the Democratic Party from happening.
Money is obviously, money is a big factor. I also think there are a lot of Democrats who don't want to appear like they're flip-flopping, and they've gone and they've kissed the wall and they've gone on their APAC trips and they've done all these things, and I think that they almost don't yet know how to pivot where the voters are going. Um, I mean, I cited the Quran on Jake Tapper after I forget his name, this Muslim guy in Australia saved all those Jewish people at the synagogue shooting. I made a reference to this line from the Quran that is exactly identical to this line in the Talmud, talking about how to save one life is as if to save all of humanity. And I mostly did it because I thought it would be fun to do that on Jake Tapper's show. Um, and I texted my friends afterwards, like, give me 3 weeks, I'm gonna have Dana Bash reciting the Shahada. But
Did
Cory
it happen?
Booker, um, inshallah. But Cory Booker shared this clip of me. Cory Booker, who has taken a gazillion dollars from AIPAC, shared this clip of me citing the Quran, and said, this young man is exactly right. And I was like, oh my God, these guys know they have to change on this. These guys know they have no choice. So I think we're going to see that. And it's going to be the definitive question of the 2028 Democratic primary field. The centrists or the moderates or whatever are the people who call themselves progressive because progressive now means whatever the person saying it wants it to mean. They're going to use the word affordability, and that's definitely something to run on, how it's going to be more expensive to be a person than it was before Trump's second term began. But also, everyone's going to be asking about Israel stuff. And I want to make sure that people know how to ask about it, because there will be politicians who are ultimately taking pro-Israel stances without taking AIPAC money.
What do you think? What do you think that I mean the we're recording on Tuesday. What is it, March 3rd? And I think it was yesterday that Marco Rubio had those remarks that now today administration's rowing back furiously. That seemed to indicate that it was concerns that Israel would strike Iran first that led us to join in the attack because the blowback would be such that I don't know, we'd suffer more troops and et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, that's blowing up bigly, as an orange man once said. Right now with this debate, especially on the right and like MAGA right, about Israel controlling American foreign policy, Mearsheimer,
Well, I
Walt,
mean,
back, and the whole sort of thing.
everything.
No, so my only question is this: is like, do you think that like the Iran war now it's unfolding? Lord knows how long this is going to last and what it's going to look like. Do you think this is an opportunity for the kind of activism that you're doing? Like, do you see like latching onto the narrative of, again, Israeli influence, like, et cetera, like leaning into that narrative on the left because, like the Tucker Carlsons and the
I
rest
mean,
are having a field day right now. What does that
yeah,
look
I
like
mean,
for you?
Israel is tearing the right apart, and they deserve it. They deserve it in every way. But these Rubio comments saying that we had to strike because Israel was going to strike and drag us into the war, it really goes to show that all of these anti-Semitic conspiracy theories are anti-Semitic conspiracy theories until they are proven to be true by government officials. Epstein being a Mossad asset, conspiracy theory. Epstein files release, he's a Mossad asset.
Wait.
Israel
Is that
dragging
proven?
us.
Whoa, hold on. I mean, I have all sorts of Epstein thoughts. I don't want to get us into that thing, but is it proven that Epstein's a fucking Mossad agent?
Well, it's more like the Mossad worked for Epstein, but you could have called that Epstein file release the Israel files. Like it was him and Ehud Barak sending each other winky faces about, doing investments into security technology together. And Epstein was emailing people like, remember to tell them I'm not a Mossad agent, winky face. Like,
And that
come on.
proves that he is. And I don't know, man. I don't know. I
Well,
think
there's this really sharp thing called Occam's razor. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
I have.
But the amount of like mental gymnastics that you have to do at this point to suggest that Epstein was not a Mossad asset requires your head to be in cement. And a lot of people's heads are in cement.
The Occam's razor is the other one, basically, is like, if you're just compiling a bunch of evidence that includes fucking winky emojis to fucking say that this is how the goddamn fucking spy secret services of Israel
Don't
operate.
swear so much, Demir.
No, I have to swear because like the Epstein shit. But anyway, like I do think that quite frankly, my opinion is that the left has now climbed in with the fucking QAnon people on Epstein. And I think this is bad for the left. That you're in the same boat as those fucking kooks, but that's American politics. No, but I want to ask you more importantly. More importantly,
if you're gonna tell me I'm a kook, I want you to elaborate. Tell me more.
No, I think the Epstein stuff is still has not proven anything except the fact that elites hang out with each other and there's prostitutes, sometimes in their 20s, that hang out at parties. That's the whole story as far as I can tell in the Epstein thing. And then, Occam's razor says that because Ehud Barak, known like mastermind of the Mossad, is running Epstein because of fucking winky emojis, what the fuck are we talking about?
Well, I mean, if I apologize for bringing up the winky emoji. That was unfair.
No, man,
it could have just been a regular smiley face. You're
all
so
I'm saying
right.
is that like that like
he's setting up trips between Indian billionaires to go visit Israeli government officials. There's countless emails between Epstein and different people around the world exhibiting a very, very clear connection between him and Israeli intelligence, and also MI6 and also the CIA. And you can flood the zone and say that the left is getting conspiratorial, but there was a conspiracy. When there is a conspiracy, people are going to recognize it as a conspiracy. And I think this is something that government intelligence agencies do all the time. They flood the zone with all this shit. So when people rightfully point out serious things that are happening, they can just be written off as conspiracies.
So I wish I could say more on this topic. I have not followed the Epstein files stuff closely enough to really offer a kind of informed perspective here. But I do think, Cameron, your original point is worth noting. That something that would have been dismissed as anti-Semitic a few weeks ago, to say that Israel dragged us into the war and we wouldn't have gone if it wasn't for them. Like Rubio basically confirmed that with his remarks. And also Tom Cotton made similar comments, Mike Johnson. So that's like three Republican leaders.
Well, I was going to say the other one was I talked about Greater Israel and the Greater Israel plan in my campaign. And Jewish Insider said I was spreading the anti-Semitic conspiracy theory of Greater Israel. The Greater Israel plan, Israel having sovereignty from the Nile to the Euphrates, that's in the Likud party charter from the 1970s. Yeah. The ruling party in Israel has Greater Israel in their charter. The Greater Israel map is on the uniforms of military personnel in Israel. And then Mike Huckabee goes and does his Christian Zionist bullshit and says to Tucker Carlson, it would be all right if they took it all. They are promised this land from the Nile to the Euphrates. So pro-Palestine people in the U.S. will say from the river to the sea, and they'll be systematically targeted as people who are making direct incitements to violence. Meanwhile, from the river to the sea is literally in the charter of the ruling party in Israel. So what we call anti-Semitic conspiracy theories are very often anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. I've been the target of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. I was going on TV talking to people about gun reform, and people on 4chan found out that my father and my grandfather were adoption lawyers, so they immediately jumped the gun to their human traffickers, because that is conspiracy kook 101, is if somebody is an adoption lawyer, they're probably like stealing babies from Russia and selling them on some sort of black market. I know anti-Semitic conspiracy theories like the back of my hand. I've been the target of many of them, but unfortunately, the pro-Israel world has completely stripped the word of its meaning, and now any sort of talk about the Israeli government's involvement in different world events is just as much of an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory as my father being a human trafficker.
No, but I mean, I think that's worth talking about. Only thing I'm pushing back on is like tying like that Epstein is like QED proof that like it's the fucking Epstein thing. That's the way that Jews are controlling politicians, or, you know, Israeli Mossad agents are controlling politicians. I just don't see the evidence of that. But I do want to go back to the question of, again, you know, what do you think the politics of the Iran attack looks like now in the wake of what Rubio said? It seems like a pretty explosive moment in politics right now. How do you envision politics going forward? I mean, you know, we just were talking about, you're seeing progress on these sorts of things, that like, you know, there's not just generational, but that there's like a time lag as politicians catch up to where mood is. I feel like mood's going to shift in a big way. I'd love to hear you just like talk about, you know, I don't know, how do you strategically thinking about this after, in the wake of, you know, this war, not in the wake of, in the midst of this war, and like Rubio's sort of remarks? What does that look like to you?
I think that the fact that the Democratic Party has not completely put its foot down and used every single lever of power at its disposal, and also invented even more levers of power to stop this, is a testament to the fact that if you're going to run as an opposition party and fail to be opposition, good fucking luck. And
Yeah.
the Democratic Party is just as complicit in paving the way for this authoritarian regime as the Republican Party. A lot of the tools the Republican Party is using right now to impose this authoritarianism are tools that the Democratic Party had a hand in crafting. So the security state that we're in, the a lot of the laws right now that are being used to control social media are things that Biden happily waved on in. The TikTok purchase is something Biden was fully supportive of. And now TikTok is consolidated under one billionaire family with what's looking like it's going to be most of the media right now. Democrats have played a hand in so many of these things. In the Patriot Act, in America's response to 9/11, which also had a huge hand in forging my Islamophobic and right-wing nationalist worldview on the West Asia, MENA area of the world. Democrats have been part of this whole thing. And I think that the Democratic Party has the opportunity right here to put up an opposition and to unite behind this anti-war message, an anti-war message against a war in Iran that Donald Trump himself was sharing as recently as I was in like maybe senior year of high school. I mean, I dropped
No,
out
I
before
agree.
senior year.
So are
but
you
know what I'm saying.
optimistic, though? I mean, I guess that's what I keep sort of coming back to on this. Because, I mean, earlier on, you sounded kind of optimistic, like change is coming. This is pretty pessimistic. Like, do you feel like when you talk to, you know, people in your circle, other activists, sort of like Democratic insiders and stuff like that, that there's a congealing right now? I mean, it's, like I said, we're 3 days into the wars. We're recording here. All sorts of things can happen. It's early. But is there like an energy behind this? Or are you feeling this kind of complicity and stuff that it's stifling, and in fact that the party's far from change? What does it look like? What does it feel like to you?
To be honest, I just have no choice but to be optimistic. I'm a very privileged person, and I'm not the like self-immolating, crucifying of myself type of white ally who sings a whole song about what a hero I am for standing in solidarity with different people. I think I'm just kind of some asshole. But as some asshole, I have no choice but to be optimistic, because if everybody takes a pessimistic worldview, nothing can be done. So I am willing to pick fights that, whether or not there's a loud voice in my head saying this is unwinnable, I have no choice but to care, because it takes a certain amount of delusion to get big things done. I was with a Palestinian person at dinner recently, and we were talking about Israel Palestine, and they laid out the most heartbreaking and sobering and devastating, just objective view of the situation. And that is their right. They that is their right, as somebody whose family is affected by this, as someone whose friends are affected by this in the region, and they have this personal connection. I'm a white American Jew. Like, I cannot give up that hope, because if everybody gives up that hope, nothing can be done. So I'm going to just do whatever I can. And whether or not I'm optimistic, it doesn't matter. My input does not need to be the same as my output, and my output is going to be optimistic.
But it seems like I'm really frustrated now, because I think this is an amazing opportunity for Democrats to actually grow some spine and be a legitimate opposition party. Most Americans are against this war. The vast majority of Democrats are against this war.
Enormous. The polls are enormous on the Democratic side. It's just
the polls are crazy. Yeah. So the fact that, again, the party can't seem to get behind its own people, to get behind its own base, and actually have a principled position, it almost makes you wonder if there's something structurally hopeless about the Democratic Party. But I totally take your point. We have to be optimistic and all of that. But this would just seem to be such an opportune moment for real opposition to what Trump is doing. And maybe we'll start to see more of that. I think, as Demir said, Rubio's remarks could be a watershed where more Democrats are realizing this is just a crazy war with a crazy justification. Anyway, I'm just frustrated by this, because I've been waiting for an opposition party to emerge for about a year now, and it still doesn't seem to be happening.
Well,
yeah.
What can we do but our very best?
Indeed. I did want to, I wanted to ask you about, I think one complication with taking a strong position against the Iran war, this new war against Iran, is the fact that the Iranian regime has killed at least 7,000 of its own people, perhaps many more than that. I'm just going I think the lowest estimates here.
I just throw it in here, just aside. Like, I know 30,000 is like on the offside, but this administration said it, and I've heard off the record other allied intel services saying that 30,000 is probably correct. So, like,
I'm just going by the human rights activist news agency HRANA, which seems to have documented a lot of the specific news. I take your point. Yeah, it could be many more, could be tens of thousands.
Half of Gaza, basically, at least half of some estimates of Gaza in like a fortnight, or like not a fortnight, a weekend.
Yeah, but then there's Demir, you
go on.
It's a per capita. I mean, Gaza's population is about 2 million.
Just saying,
Iran's,
lots of killing.
Lots of killing. Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Lots of killing, and I think I think that makes it hard for some of us who have a very strong pro-human rights agenda. We want to see more democracy in the Middle East. We don't want to see regimes killing their own people. I don't think we should lament the fact that Ayatollah Khamenei was killed. I mean, he was a mass murderer in Syria. He was a major contributor to the Syrian civil war for years that took over 500,000 lives of Syrians. I mean, the list goes on. So I think that makes it a little bit like we want to be opposed to this war, but we also don't want to seem like we don't care. We want to seem like we care about the fact that Iranian lives have been lost at the hands of their regime. I'm still working through my own views on this, and I'm a little bit torn on how to talk about it. But I'm curious, Cameron, how you sort of square the circle, because you're a human rights person. Presumably, you're no fan of the Iranian regime, and there is something positive about seeing some of the Iranian leadership face their demise.
Yeah, in like a revenge perspective, sure. in like a you had it coming perspective, sure. In terms of what that's going to mean for the Iranian people and the region, the thought of this being just some organic positive, I need to hear a plan. I need to hear an explanation. I need to hear a way this is not going to cause countless more people to die. And every time we do something like this, countless more people die. So when Trump goes in and intervenes, there is no plan. Like the human rights disaster in Venezuela is not on a better course now. There is still a potential famine coming. The conditions for people who are living there are still horrific and set to get even worse with time. What's the difference now? The difference is, I guess some of Trump's friends are making some oil money, but that does not mean I am waving a flag with Maduro's face on it. I am just saying, if we are going to do things like this, actions that historically lead to violence, there needs to be a plan for peace and stability in the region. And if our plan for peace and stability in the region is Israel tightening its iron grip, that's not going to lead to anything resembling peace. But again, I have a dipshit layman perspective on Iran. Truly.
No, I'm 100% with you on this. I think like going into Iran is a disaster. No matter how many people they kill. This is where Shadi and I absolutely, part ways on this sort of stuff, because this is now maybe a question to your optimism. Like, do you see a way to do this right now that we're in it? I mean, I'm constantly in conversations. I edit here at the Washington Post, getting like all sorts of different people pitching different things. A lot of the Iranians are saying like, no, there's a way path forward. If you do X, Y, and Z, we can get to a positive outcome. My job as an editor is to give all sorts of people all sorts of perspectives on there. So we're looking to get the best versions of every argument. I don't see it. I listen to it and I don't see a path forward to, some sort of thing. What's your intuition on that? Like, never mind Trump. This is the president we have. This is the administration we have. But is there a way to do this right in your opinion, or is this one of these like Mission Impossible sort of things? Like, don't do this sort of shit because you're not going to be able to set up like a decent outcome.
The problem with Mission Impossible is Tom Cruise almost always figures out a decent outcome.
Right.
There's no stopping that son of a gun.
True.
But in terms of a literal Mission Impossible, I mean, right now we have the opportunity to escalate even further, drop more bombs, and continue marching to the beat of the Israeli government's drum. Or we can say, what is the path forward right now where the least amount of civilians get murdered? That is how I would approach this issue. But the way Trump is talking his big game, there's no plan. Trump said, I had 2 to 3 successors in mind, and we just killed 2 of them. Like,
that was a remarkable statement. I couldn't believe it was true. Yeah.
And this morning,
literally by this time next week, fucking Rubio's going to be there as the new Shah. Like, that's what I think the plan is Shah Marco Rubio.
Yeah.
So as we start to wrap up here, I did want to have some time to talk about maybe cultural issues. I know that isn't, first and foremost on people's minds right now, but as someone who's been involved in progressive politics for the last 8 years or so, I'm curious what you make of the shifts over the past decade, where whether or not we like the term wokeness, I think there was obviously a sense that the Democratic Party and the progressive activist base was becoming very woke at a particular time, and that has now subsided. But cultural issues still matter, and I don't know how much I didn't get a great sense of how much you focused on them in your own campaign. Probably not so much, but I think in 2028, Israel-Palestine will be a litmus test. The Iran war will be a litmus test, but I'm sure we're going to have more debate returning about whether the Democratic Party is out of touch with the broad swath of Americans who are not fans of all this wokeness stuff. I'm curious just like where you're at on that right now at this point.
Look at how Mayor Mamdani ran his campaign. Mayor Mamdani wasn't virtue signaling wokeness, but he wasn't ceding any ground on social progressivism. There was no point at which Mayor Mamdani was going on podcasts and saying retarded. Like, he was running a campaign where he was talking about the issues that mattered to New Yorkers, and socially positive and inclusive language was an organic element of that, but nobody was walking around talking about how woke this guy was, because I say this all the time. It's not about what Democrats are saying. It's about what they are not saying. I don't care if a Democrat sounds like a woke virtue signaler to me, so long as they are talking about the fact that there is a very small group of people at the top in this country who are looking to divide us so we do not create any class solidarity where we can obtain more rights that uplift the material conditions of the American working class. Nobody thinks of Bernie Sanders as woke, but Bernie Sanders talks about the issues that matter to people. The wokeness comes when a Democrat is running on a moderate platform that is not going to challenge the system at all, but they think that, virtue signaling just how woke they are counts as progressive politics. Wokeness in place of left-wing policy is a problem, but like using pronouns that go beyond the two most popular ones, it doesn't matter so long as you are not omitting the serious things that matter to people. So, talking about unhoused people versus homeless people, I'm more interested in what the solutions the politician is providing than which word they're using.
Right. So like materialism over, again, sorry, not to like, but basically, talking about like real hard things, i.e. like economic populism.
I appreciate you not getting into
I don't want to get into that, but I know, because I don't want to.
I just wouldn't know what you were talking about.
But you do know what I'm talking about, because you said it just now. Basically, you're talking about kind of what, because Bernie himself is historically not woke. He in fact, that famous interview he had with Ezra, he was just like, open borders, that's like a Koch brothers thing. Now, I know he's moved on that issue back then, but like that is old left economic sort of stuff, which is to say we protect our workers, our working class, as opposed to the woke stuff, which is kind of like this free-flowing, feel-good sort of stuff, inclusivity without stakes, basically. And like Bernie's whole argument is solidarity is about like hard economic things, right? Is that right?
I mean, look, I talk to socially conservative and like MAGA friendly people plenty. I don't live in a bubble. I talk to people who disagree with me on every issue, including Israel-Palestine, plenty. When I actually break down what my anti-woke friends' problem with woke is, it isn't the woke, it's the party that the people throw themselves for being woke. It's the fact that the people use woke as virtue signaling. They use it as a way to demonstrate that they are a morally righteous person more so than the individual who isn't woke, and they project this image of the non-woke person that it is a moral failing of theirs to not be woke. Whereas my message to non-woke people was always like, oh, I talk like this because there's some people who it might make feel more welcome in the room, and that's why I do it. And they don't care.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, you're like using some fancy Nancy talk because that's how you like to interact with people. But I don't go around saying like, oh, my use of individual instead of man or woman, so I'm gender inclusive. That's why I'm such a good guy. I'm not even that good a guy. I'm fine. Like, there are girls who will tell me I'm the nicest guy they've ever dated, and I'm like, that's a problem, because look, compared to most dudes, I'm like a 12 out of 10 in terms of kindness, but compared to my actual measure of morality, I'm like a 7, maybe 7.5. That's
good.
How fucking low the bar is.
7's pretty good, man.
It's
like, come on.
It's a passing grade. But like, I say to people, when they say I'm the nicest guy they've ever talked, I'm like, you understand that says more about guys than it does about me, right?
No, fair. But again, though, so the real core of politics, though, is what you'd say is like, I don't know, the meat and potatoes stuff, like putting like having people have access to, I don't know, the basics, home, shelter, food, ability to make a decent living. That's what politics is. All the rest of it's noise. Is that right?
There's a lot of money in this country, and the government's job is to take a portion of that money and use it to make your life better.
Interesting way of putting it.
I mean, it's so again, this is the beauty of my layman skills, is that I know how to talk to laymen because I am the layman. Like, I can engage with concepts that much more complex than what I just described. My political theory is there's a lot of money, and a good deal of that money should be spent improving the lives of other people. So I'm going to support the candidate who is going to take the largest amount of that money and use it to uplift the conditions of the most amount of people. And there you have it. Done. You don't have to be that smart. You just need a politician who's able to communicate that to people without over-intellectualizing. And listen, I think there's a lot of reasons we didn't get the Sanders presidency that I was hoping for in 2020. And I think one of them is on the debate stage. When Bernie Sanders was talking about healthcare, he was explaining in detail what his plan was and how it would actually save Americans money. Joe Biden was going up there and being like, "Don't you remember when everybody was nice?"
Yeah, I mean, the party conspired there too. I mean, to be fair, again, this is getting back to Shadi's concerns and sort of things that you're hinting at, right? Like the party machine is a machine, and it definitely conspired first time around against Bernie, and like Joe Biden was a consensus machine politician that was coughed up. That, like, again, Obama and others thought was the best way forward in the last election. I mean,
Well, he won one of them.
that's true. That is true. That worked again.
True. I think. How inspired are you by Zoran? I mean, because I think what was interesting about Zoran is that he didn't actually talk about Israel Palestine all that much. It
No,
was
they
in the
forced it
back.
on him.
Yeah, exactly. It was in the background. We knew that he was committed to the topic. We knew that he was animated by it, but he was very on message in hitting on affordability and making that the key focus of his campaign. So I think there's a little bit of a tension here, because if we're talking about Israel Palestine being a litmus test in 2028, the Zoran model tells us two different things. It says, one, yes, be principled on Palestine, but it also tells us don't go overboard in discussing Palestine all the time, that there's a kind of middle ground there. I don't know what.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. He was running to be mayor. That, people would compare our campaigns, and I'm like, our campaigns couldn't be more different. Like, Zohran was running to do exactly what I said, take the money in New York and use it to make New York working families have an easier time living their lives. And there was an optimism to the campaign. I was running an outraged campaign. I talked about Israel a lot because it's your job in Congress to do that. It's not your job as the mayor to do that. I want to hear congressional and Senate candidates talk about Israel more than I want to hear gubernatorial candidates talk about Israel. It's all a matter of what your job is in that office. So yes, because Zohran is a brown Muslim man, he had to talk about Israel-Palestine an egregious amount. And they asked that question on the debate stage, would you go to Israel as the mayor, which is the most psychotic thing I've ever heard in my entire life. And Zohran, his answer to that, in my opinion, really provides a look into why he won, which is his answer was, no, I'm going to stay here in New York City working on the 5 boroughs. Done. Like, he was the candidate who positioned himself as the one who was thinking the most about your day-to-day life as a New Yorker. Andrew Cuomo was running on being the exact type of party figure that everybody's done with. So I do think the mayor's victory provides at least a North Star for the party, and he's emerged as a leader in the party because he's talking about using the government to make people's lives better, because he took a principled stance on the matter, and any ground he has ceded on it since, I consider to be negligible compared to what he needs to do to see forth his agenda without it being completely sabotaged. And it's something that Democrats should look to. I'm afraid that the way Democrats are going to take notes from the mayor's victory is to just use the affordability word, like the word progressive, to just mean whatever they want it to mean. They won't talk about Medicare for all. They'll talk about Medicare for all who want it. And it's like, well, you know what's contributing some of the most of the affordability crisis right now is skyrocketing premiums. Why are you talking about why are you talking about affordability without talking about Medicare for all? And
so when you look at 2028, obviously, well, not obviously yet, but everyone assumes AOC is going to run. Who makes you excited on the left? Like, and who fills you with despair? I mean, what do you think of, like, of the possibilities and chances of someone like Newsom? Is he just like, a snake, or how do you even think about that?
Or Josh Shapiro,
Or
for
Shapiro,
that matter.
yeah.
Well, Josh Shapiro and Gavin Newsom, to me, are both defined by the thing they share the most in common with Donald Trump. Gavin Newsom, like Donald Trump, will talk a big game about somebody until he's in their immediate physical presence, and then all he wants is their approval in that moment. He has Charlie Kirk on his podcast. What does he do? He says, my son is a huge fan. He talks to Ben Shapiro about the genocide in Gaza and is like, LOL, never mind, it isn't a genocide. You're so right, Ben Shapiro. He sees Donald Trump. He hugs the guy. He has this fun, affable experience with him. Gavin Newsom talks a big game, but he doesn't have a spine. Josh Shapiro, like Donald Trump, loves airing out his petty personal grievances for everybody in the world to see. So Shapiro's 2028 campaign launched with his book tour, which launched as like a platform for him to talk shit about Kamala Harris, and not for the reasons where it's reasonable to talk shit about Kamala Harris. Like, Josh Shapiro launched his presidential campaign talking about how he felt personally spited and throwing around anti-Semitism accusations because he was asked if he has ever worked with the state of Israel, which he volunteered for. So that is a reasonable question. Tim Walz was asked if he was ever involved with China. And Tim Walz didn't come out and say he was being discriminated against as a fucking Bucks fan. So Shapiro is basically airing out his dirty laundry for everybody, and Newsom is, posting AI pictures of JD Vance. And if that's presidential leadership, we're fucked. I think AOC.
How about Kamala before we talk about AOC? Like, because she's, to me, it's staggering that, I mean, it's so early, none of these polls matter for anything, but that she's up there, just to me, it fills me with horror. But I don't know.
I mean, she's got name recognition. She's got name recognition. That's, yeah. I think that's what it is. I don't think Harris would be very successful, not just in the general, but also in the primary. I think AOC is obviously very impressive. She was asked at a town hall, what do you want for the people in MAGA who hate you? And the first thing she said was, I want them to have health care. And like, that's a unifying message, is just saying to people in this country, I actually think that I can make your life better. And I don't care if you agree with me or disagree with me. Right now, we are in a phase where we need to restructure how the U.S. government works to undo a lot of damage that's been done to your life. I think I can do that. I think, AOC, if Roe decides he wants to run, Roe can say, hey guys, I took on corruption in the government. I forced a vote on this Iran stuff. And the way that he's been approaching everything, he moves at laser speed. He gets things done very fast. And frankly, Khanna's office does more in a month than a lot of congressional offices do in their 2-year term. And frankly, they do more in 2 weeks. Whether or not everybody agrees with what they're doing, they are extremely competent and they get a lot of things done. And at the pace that Khan is moving, alongside his unifying front with Massey, where he's working with a Republican to do all of these things, and he gets to say to Americans, this is not about the party. This is about American people who are fighting the elites who mean to drag your children to war. I think that there's a real argument there. But the truth is, I'm so focused on 2026. There will be a time and place to start calling shots on 2028. But I mean, calling shots early has never done much to help us. So I'm trying to avoid getting too in the weeds, because anything can happen. Anyone can have some career-ending scandal. Anyone can become a news superstar in any circumstance. I do think that Israel is going to be the number one litmus test, and Israel and Iran are the same thing, but they're going to be the number one litmus test.
Well, thanks so much, Cameron. I've wanted to have you on Wisdom of Crowds for a while, so I'm really glad you made the time to join us. And we covered a lot of ground and talked about a lot of issues. So I appreciate you being straight up with us and just like kind of laying out your positions. So thank you.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely.
Sorry.